Hi there, this is Erin from Blossy Bee. Welcome to my channel. The plan for this video is to create some cute cat magnets, and I'm going to use mix-in acetate decals for decoration. And then I'm going to finish off some spare resin projects that I've been adding to over time. This video does jump around a little bit. I do have a method to my madness though. So here you can see me pouring some resin that I mixed off screen. It's art resin, a 2-to-1 epoxy. And I'm just pouring a very small amount into each of these two cat silicone mold parts here. And then I'm just going to let that sit for a minute. I'm hoping it will self-level and move out to all of the edges. So here I'm showing you some of my little bear creations. I have this mould, and it's one of the ones that I fill up regularly with any leftovers. And here is a new one. I think he's like a little moose, so he's been built up as well. I'm going to add some glitter into my resin, or some of my resin. I've kept others aside. In hindsight, I should not have been working over my clear resin here with glitter. Nothing happened, but it could have. So I'm just going to carefully mix that in. I am working on top of my Estoyo heat mat. You can just see the little black clip to the right, which is where it plugs in, and also I'm using their silicone mat over the top. Now here are some flakes. They're called mica flakes. I bought them at a discount store many years ago and I've never used them, and I probably won't again, to be honest. But I thought I'd give it a try for today. As you can see, they're not that easy to get out, and some of them have clumped together, but they do have an interesting texture. They're like little pieces of like a wafer, really, and they've got a gold, sort of a gold to clear texture to them. So I pop those into some clear resin and just get each of those pieces covered as well as possible with the resin. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of that glitter mix to that as well, just to add a little bit more colour. So as you know, if you're a fellow crafter, often when you're using resin you do have more than needed, and that's why it's always handy to have some of these little moulds on the go. And I find that you end up with some really interesting colours and styles. And the two that I showed you before were ones that I've filled up over a period of time, and then as the video goes on another one will pop in which I'd forgotten I'd made, and I spotted it and thought I'd add that in. So I'm just giving that a little squeeze in order to try and get the resin distributed amongst those layers as much as possible anyway. And then I'll just sit that to one side for the moment. So the resin mix-in acetate sheets that I'm using today are very inexpensive ones from Kmart. I've been very nervous about using these up until now because they do have quite a visible edge around them. So when you pop them out of the sheet, you can see that clear edge. But, as you'll see, I was pleasantly surprised. I found quite quickly it was much better to switch over to a pair of tweezers. I'm just using my Cricut ones here. I do give them a very good clean afterwards. So these have a right side and a wrong side. So I'm placing them with the right side down, and I'm just layering them and moving them around until I feel quite happy with them. And then I'm just going to pop that to the side while I continue on with this topping up project. So now, after giving it a little fresh stir, I'm going to pop some of that into the little mousse mould. Looks so pretty, very shiny, no colouring in it apart from that gold glitter, so I'm very happy with that effect. I give it just the slightest little squeeze and bump to try and help any bubbles out that may have formed. And now I'm going to top up the little bear mould in exactly the same way. You might spot a little mistake I made here. We'll come back to it very shortly. But for now, we're going to go back to the cat magnets, and what I'm doing is, after letting those sit for a few minutes, I'm just popping the tiniest little bit of clear over the top of them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the resin that I had set aside as clear, and I'm going to add to it some very fine black holographic glitter. I'm so sorry, I cannot remember where I got this from. It's just one of many glitters tucked away in my stash. But I'm going to carefully mix that in. I really love the idea of a dark background for these magnets, and I've also had great results with this glittery black in the past. I'm going to add in just the slightest little bit of the gold glitter as well, and I'm really happy I did that because it really does pop and it gives it that sort of extra hint of sparkle and luxury. Here was the little mistake I made. I had to set aside the cat magnets just very quickly. I realised I didn't do my moose's antlers, and I had to take some from the other moulds and pop them in there. Oh dear. Things don't always go to plan, but they work out okay in the end. So now I've taken out some of that resin from my top-up moulds. I'm going to replace it with just a little bit of the black sparkly resin. Just popping it in until I'm happy with the level. I actually think it's going to look really pretty. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start popping some of this black resin on top of the clear resin with the decals. Now the layer is not set, in fact it's still quite fresh, so I'm just being very gentle and very delicate, and I'm popping in just enough, or what I hope is just enough, to cover that. And I am going to, though, have to sort of tease it out into those smaller, narrower parts of each of the cats. As long as I had the main body area of the cat black, I was happy with that, because I am going to be attaching a magnet to them, and I did want that part to be dark and so that the magnet could not be seen. So I wasn't so fussed about the legs and the tails, but I did do my best to try and just gently encourage that resin through, knowing that resin does whatever it wants really, and it might shrink away from the edges. But as long as I had that central part covered, I was quite happy. And then because I had quite a bit left over, again, it's always the way, isn't it? I decided to fill up a third magnet. So that magnet is actually quite plain. It is just that black glitter, but you will see that I give him a little bit of a glow up towards the end. I'm now giving them just a little spritz of isopropyl alcohol spray, just in case there are any extra little bubbles that are sitting on the surface. Then I cover them with the Astorio cover for the heating mat. Next day, ready to go. Looking pretty good. So I'll go ahead and demould the cat magnets first. And they do come out of the mould really easily. The first one I'm going to demould is the rather plain cat. Plain for the moment anyway. And I'm very careful with the smaller parts of the silicone mould pieces. Just they can be a little bit delicate. I'm very happy with him. Now I'm going to demould the two that I used the acetate mix in, and I'm really happy with that effect. I cannot see any of the acetate surrounding the flowers and the leaves at all. They have blended in beautifully. I'm so excited about this actually. It's, as I said, the first time I've tried using them, I've been very nervous about them up until now, and I just think they look so pretty. Okay, the next item to be demoulded is the bear. Now you'll see that the bears have increased in numbers mysteriously. I remember I said I spotted one that I hadn't included, so he's sitting there now too. So I just very carefully go around the bottom of the mould and just release that edge, and it isn't too hard to demould this one. You'll get to see all of the weird and wonderful little projects I've been working on in the various layers. And there he is, another cute little bear, beautifully shiny. The last little layer I'd actually done were all these teeny little pale pink circles. So he's got a rather interesting tummy there. Now, lastly, I'm going to demould the moose. Now, Mr. Moose and I ended up having a few words over this demoulding. For those of you who have this mould, you already know it's not the easiest to get out easily. So it did take me a little bit longer than I'm showing you here. And I did have to use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol just sprayed in under the silicone mould to help. But then finally it did pop out, and I was really happy with how he looked. Just that last little push just looks like it happened magically, doesn't it? Thanks to the power of video editing. And there we go. We just won't mention the other 4 or 5 frustrating minutes that happened before then. So I think he looks super handsome. And here are his antlers that I will demould now. That's such a tiny little mould, this part, and very easy to pull out. So sparkly, almost festive. Now these are designed just to sit into a little opening at the top, so I'll pop them in with some glue. So here I have the E6000 glue. I do like using this when I'm working with resin, as it is specifically designed for that, and as it does say there, it is crystal clear. So I've got a couple of little jobs to do with the glue. The first one, I'm going to attach the antlers to the mousse, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop some glue down into that little gap and get that in there, and then I'm also going to apply some E6000 glue to the base of the antlers as well, just so that I get that really good adhesion. And I find that this sets up quite quickly. I usually hold them together just even only for a few seconds and then just let them sit. I would certainly give them definitely a few hours or even a day or two if it was something that the adhesion was critical for. But here we go. Oh, knocked him over. Not very nice of me. And I'm going to just pop them in. Hold them for a few seconds. And how handsome does he look now? I have seen some people colour in eyes and a mouth and everything, but I do just love him the way he is. So now I'm going to move on to the magnets, and again using the E6000 glue, I'm going to apply these. You'll notice that I've got them spread apart on my silicone mat. That's because when you're doing a few magnets and putting them together and you've got the magnets all laying around, they do what magnets do and start attracting each other. So for safety's sake and a little bit less of shock value, I try and keep them a little bit apart. So I go ahead and do the same with all three of those magnets. And it's as I'm working on this, the third one, the plainer of the three, or the more plain of the three, that I decide it needs a little bit of a zhuzh, a little bit of something. So I didn't film that part, unfortunately, but I am going to go ahead and add some little gold nail decals all over him, just to try and brighten him up a bit, because next to the other two with their beautiful floral mix-ins, it doesn't look quite as fancy. And the glow up is complete, looking a lot more sparkly. And these are the little nail decals that I used. Very quick and easy way of doing this. Now I'm going to give them all a top coat. I wasn't planning on it, but because I've added the nail decals, I really do need to make sure that they're all sealed in. I've set those popsicle sticks there just to keep the magnet part off the mat and to keep them nice and flat and even. So a little bit of a confession time. Doming items is probably one of my least favourite parts of working with resin. Don't love it. Certainly don't love it with very small items like this. I think it's one of the reasons why I try and work very hard to keep my resin work very precise and crisp, so that I have to do as a little of this as possible. Anyway, domed they were, and I'm very happy that I did. They look great. All I'm doing is going ahead and with a very small implement is working that resin right to the very edge, noting that it can shrink back. So even if you think you've got it to the edge and it's looking perfect, it is worth rechecking after a few minutes just to make sure that you've covered all of the areas. And I know that the lights that I'm using do make it a little bit difficult to see which parts are done, but I promise they're all done properly. So here we've got the final result. We've got our 3 magnets. We've got the 2 either end that were done with the resin mix-ins from Kmart, and the middle one which we zhuzhed up a little bit. Here's our very handsome moose, and the 4 bears that I now have in total. And thank you so much for joining me on this little crafting adventure. I really appreciate you watching very much. If you did enjoy it, it would be fantastic if you could like, share, comment on the video and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.